All right, we're back in Notes 2 of Unit 2. Just like in Notes 1, we're picking up the pace. There's going to be a lot of vocab in these notes, a lot of different ideas swirling around, and I want to make sure you're confident, 100% confident with all three of them. If you're rushing through, again, you're really going to struggle, so when you see something you don't understand, pause and ask questions. Don't try to memorize everything all at once either. Instead, I want you to make sure you're comfortable flipping back to these notes whenever you have questions. Whenever you don't know what a word means, whenever you need to know what an ordered pair is, those are things that these notes will have for you when you have questions. Starting with vocab. So, in Notes 1, we talked a lot about input and output. Like I said in the last notes, functions are actually a really easy thing. With a lot of details that make them seem a lot harder than they really are. The best way to make that easier is to put a bunch of vocab words in one of two categories. Each of these words means slightly different things, but for right now, I just need you to know which ones represent input and which ones represent output. So, all of these words I'm going to put in the input box mean the same thing. Input, well, it's the name of the group. X is also an input, and the word domain also means input as well. All three of these words mean whatever you plug into a function. Similarly, we have a bunch of words that mean output. Our output is whatever comes out of a function, and the first word we're going to use is output. I'm going to put bullet points next to these. Another one's going to be the letter Y. If X is what we plug into an expression, Y is what we get out of an expression. It's our output. Other words also include range and f of x. If x was what we plugged in, f of x, the whole function, is what we get out. All of these words mean input, and all of these words mean output. Keep them in the back of your mind because you're going to be seeing a lot of these words at different times. Over the course of the school year, you'll learn what each means in a specific context. But for now, they mean this, what you plug in, or what you get out. Okay, let's move on to the next part. So, the next thing you need to know is ordered pairs. You've seen these before, but you've definitely seen them as a different name before. Do you remember ordered pairs? They have another name, which is points. A point is just a relationship between an x and a y. Eventually, you're going to see us put them on graphs. But for now, they look like this. Parentheses, an x value, or my input, and a y value, or my output. I plug in an x, I get out a y. Their relationship is an ordered pair. Points give us an easy way to show a lot of input and output values. The x is our input, the y is our output. It allows us to organize answers to function questions very quickly. So here, I'm going to plug 1 in to 3 times a. When I plug in 1, I do 3 times 1, and that gives me 3. I plug 2 in. 2 times 3 gives me 6. Plug in 3. Plug in for x. And I get 9. Plug in 4. I get 12. 5. I get 15. 6. I get 18. 7. I get 21. And 8. I get 24. I plug in an x, I get out a y. So, what these points are ultimately doing is organizing my question and my answer. Question, answer, question, answer. You're putting it in a very tight order though. Your answer is very short. It's easy to show. I plug in my 3, I get out my 9. I plug in my 4, I get out my 12. I plug in my 5, I get out my 15. Plug in, take out. Your x is going in, your answer is coming out. Okay. So, nothing new, just a new way to show our answers. But this is important for our third thing. Is it a function? So, in an input, in a function, each input can only have one matching output. And it makes sense if you think about it. If you work 10 hours at $12 an hour, you definitely want to make 120 bucks. If you make less, you're going to be mad. If your boss gives you more, your boss is going to be mad. If your boss says you make $12 an hour and you work 10 hours, you better get 120 bucks at the end of that. Same thing here. If you drive 10 hours at 60 miles per hour, you have to go 600 miles. No more, no less. That's just a law of nature. In the function we did above, if x is 2, the only answer we can get for y will be 6. There's no other answer that works. So, several things aren't functions. If one x value has multiple y values, it's not a function. And you'll see what I mean. Here, I have this x value of 1 has a y value of 1. X is 2, y is 2. X is 3, y is 3. X is 4, y is 4. Each x only has one y value, so this is a function. The one below it is not, though. See how I have multiple of the same x? What this is saying is that an x value of 1, has a y value of 1, 2, 3, and 4. This x of 1 has multiple y values. It's not a function. X has multiple y's, so it's not a function. Same thing here. In this case, each x has its own y value. They're all the same y value, but my x does not show up twice. X does not have the same y value multiple times, so it is a function. Here, I have 3 4 times, and 3 has a different y value each time. Because my x value of 3 has multiple y values, it is not a function. It's pretty easy to see here as well. I have an input-output diagram where each input value, doesn't matter what that is, has a different unique y value. So 10 only goes to 15, 20 only goes to 45, 30 only goes to 25, and 40 only goes to 35. Each x only goes to one y. Because of that, it is in fact a function. Lastly, for this diagram, my 4 has 2 different y values. Because it has 2 different y values, same with this 5. This 5 has 2 different y values. It is not a function. And again, think of it this way. This would be like your boss saying, if you work 4 hours, I'll either pay you $12 or $15. I don't know. You want to know. If you don't know, it's not a function. He says the same thing. If you work 5 hours, I might pay you 18 or I might pay you 21. Obviously, he's not picking one. It's not a function. Every input, every x, only has one y value. You can't have 2 different answers to a question. So, we talked about 3 things. I gave you a bunch of vocab. vocab that means plugging something in and taking something out. We defined ordered pairs, which are points. We showed that we plug in our x, we get out our y. Same thing here. We plug in our x, we get out our y. We plug in our x, we get out our y. We plug in our x, we get out our y. And then I explained that something is not a function if my x has multiple y values. In essence, this means for any of my function diagrams, if my x shows up multiple times or has multiple arrows coming out of it, then it's not a function. Each x can only have one y value. Okay. You're going to practice all three of these things on the back. Take your time with this. Make sure you're using the front to answer questions. When you're doing the ordered pairs one, these three parentheses are completely blank. I want you to come up with your own x values. Lastly, for each of these questions down here, I'd like you to tell me whether it's a function or not. Take your time with it and let us know if you have any questions. Thank you very much, and I'll see you in the next one.